Looking down at me, suffering on the hospital bed, my husband coldly declared,
I'm going on a trip now.
Huh?
You're 9 weeks pregnant, right? Well, morning sickness is something you can handle on your own. I don't want to be tied down during that time. I just had a place I wanted to go. Well then, take care.
My husband left the room in a brisk manner, leaving me behind. Wait! Tears welled up involuntarily, and I endured the suffering all by myself. After that, with no contact from my husband whatsoever, I spent 3 anxious days. Then my mother-in-law rushed into the hospital room and yelled, My son! My son! He was rushed to the emergency room and is unconscious! What? What does that mean? Carrying my big belly, I headed to the hospital where my husband was taken, and there, an unimaginable scene unfolded before me. My name is Mia. I'm a 28-year-old housewife entering my 2nd year of marriage this year. I am currently pregnant with our first child. I met my husband Matteo through a mutual friend, and I was drawn to his easygoing personality, so I asked him out. Matteo is a diligent employee at a regular company, and he takes good care of me. When we found out about the pregnancy, he was overjoyed and ecstatic.
Congratulations! I'll take a day off work tomorrow. Let's celebrate.
That's too much. We need to be responsible since we'll have expenses from now on, so please, focus on your work. Although I replied like that, I honestly felt happy to see him so excited. In the end, he treated me to a homemade meal over the weekend that was too much to finish. And so my pregnancy journey began. Since then, Matteo would buy multiple amulets for a safe delivery. And even before my belly grew big, he would place his hand on it every morning.
May you be born healthy,
he would pray. I had a lot of anxieties being pregnant for the first time, but seeing Matteo acting a little out of the ordinary like that made me feel better. Around the 7th week of pregnancy, I started to become somewhat sensitive to food smells. One day, despite having no appetite, I thought I should eat for nutrition, but when I forced myself to eat, my stomach felt extremely nauseous, and I rushed to the bathroom. In my foggy state of mind, I understood. Morning sickness had begun. When I finally calmed down and returned from the bathroom, Matteo, with a face ever paler than mine, was worried about me, so I couldn't help but laugh. Morning sickness symptoms weren't too severe yet, but despite Matteo being busy with work, he took care of me and showed me kindness. Even when he came home tired from work, he would talk only about me and our unborn child, and I genuinely thought he was a great husband from the bottom of my heart. However, the atmosphere at our home gradually started to change. There came a time when he would take out his smartphone more often, and when I caught a glimpse of the screen, it seemed like he was having exchanges with someone. It's Matteo we're talking about. It couldn't possibly be an affair, right? While feeling a slight sense of unease, I believed that at the time. However, as the days went by, the frequency of his exchanges on his smartphone increased. He even started taking out his phone during our conversations. One night, unable to sleep due to the effects of morning sickness, Matteo quietly got up, gazing at his phone screen, and left the bedroom. And there were times when he didn't return for a long time. I used to think that he went out because he was considerate of me sleeping, but the unease within me kept growing steadily. By the time I entered the 9th week of pregnancy, the symptoms of morning sickness had worsened, and I started experiencing headaches and ringing in my ears. It was no longer a situation where I simply felt anxious about Matteo's actions. Is the smell of food always this nauseating? I couldn't eat enough during meals, and even drinking water made my stomach feel queasy, causing me to vomit. With days like that continuing, my body gradually became unable to function properly, so Matteo drove me to the hospital, and I was immediately put on an IV drip.
Your morning sickness symptoms are severe. It would be better for you to stay in the hospital until your condition improves.
I was able to go home that day, but the next day I was admitted to the hospital right away. Matteo expressed his concern for me, but he had a serious look on his face as if he was thinking about something. The next morning, after preparing for my hospital stay, Matteo drove me to the hospital again. Once I finished the necessary preparations in the assigned hospital room, Matteo said something unbelievable.
I'm going on a trip now.
Huh? I was so shocked that I couldn't find the words to speak. Before I had time to ask him where he was going or what he wanted, Matteo briskly left the hospital room. Leaving me behind for a trip? Is this some kind of joke? That's what I thought, and once I calmed down, I tried calling him, but there was no answer. As I became deeply troubled, the symptoms of morning sickness worsened. I could hardly eat any meals, and the headaches were so severe that I even thought I might die. I tried calling him multiple times, wishing that Matteo would at least be there, but for the next 3 days I couldn't reach him at all, and I was overcome with immense anxiety. My parents lived quite far away, so they couldn't come to visit me easily, and I was left to struggle with pain and uncertainty all by myself. In the midst of that, my mother-in-law came to visit me.
Long time no see, Mia. I heard you've been going through a tough time. Are you okay?
I'm managing somehow. Thank you for coming all this way. Although I replied like that, I couldn't hide the worry in my expression.
You look a bit pale. Is something bothering you?
Actually, Matteo went on a trip. It's been 3 days and I haven't been able to contact him.
Well, what on earth? That child?
My mother-in-law widened her eyes in surprise and immediately made a call to Matteo together as we went to the conversation room. I had thought it would be useless because he hadn't answered the phone this morning, but it seemed Matteo responded right away.
Matteo, where are you right now? Mia is extremely worried, you know. What are you thinking?
She's speaking quietly in the hospital, but I can tell that Priscilla is sternly reprimanding him. Now it seems Matteo has started talking, but I can't hear his voice from where I am. Matteo seems to be explaining at length, and my mother-in-law is listening attentively, nodding along. After a while, my mother-in-law,
Understood. I will talk to her.
With just that response, she hung up the phone and turned to me. What did he say?
Well, there are some circumstances right now that I can't discuss, but when Matteo comes back, he will explain it himself. So for now, focus on resting and taking care of your health.
My mother-in-law said that while avoiding eye contact, looking awkward. What do you mean? Was it a trip? I asked various questions, but I was only given vague answers, and I couldn't get a clear response. Afterward, my mother-in-law took care of my surroundings and left the hospital room, showing me kindness. Feeling even more anxious with the unsatisfactory answers, I couldn't sleep and spent my time on the bed, lost in thought. Then, after about 3 hours, the screen of my phone in silent mode lit up. Matteo? For a moment, I had hope, but it was my mother-in-law's name that appeared on my screen. Mother-in-law, about earlier. Before I could finish my greeting, my mother-in-law shouted in a panicked voice.
Matteo! He was transported to the hospital and is unconscious.
Transported?
Anyway, I'll come back immediately.
As the call ended, I was overwhelmed and approached a nurse who was nearby. My husband is in critical condition. I need to be discharged right away. The nurse was surprised by my urgency, but when she looked at the IV tube still attached to my arm, "Well, not right away," she stammered in her response. While we were calling for a doctor and explaining the situation, my mother-in-law arrived shortly after. In the end, we were able to obtain permission to leave on the condition that my mother-in-law would accompany me, and the two of us rushed out of the hospital. It seemed that Matteo had been transported to a hospital quite far away, but my mother-in-law provided a car and drove at high speed on the highway. During that time, there was no conversation between the two of us, and I could only pray. What on earth is happening, Matteo? God, please help him. We drove for hours with hardly any breaks, and finally we arrived at the hospital. We quickly exited the car, inquired about the room with the guidance, and hurriedly made our way there. As I practically jumped into the room and opened the door, there before me on the bed was Matteo sleeping, and a young woman clinging to him and crying. Seeing that woman, my mind went blank. My mother-in-law was frozen by my side, just as shocked. Who is she? Finally managing to force out my voice, I received a shocking answer.
I'm Karen, Mateo's girlfriend.
Girlfriend? How? The woman, while crying, still sent me provocative glances. She must know that Mateo is married and that I am his wife, but now was not the time to focus on that. I rushed to the bed.
What happened to Mateo? Actually, Mateo and I were on a trip, but he got into an accident along the way.
Upon hearing those words, I became convinced. Mateo was indeed having an affair, and the person he was exchanging messages with on his phone was her. I turned my gaze to my mother-in-law standing beside me, who wore an equally surprised expression but didn't say anything. Just then the doctor arrived, said that there were no serious injuries to his body, but that he had hit his head hard, and that there was a 50-50 chance that he would regain consciousness. Knowing that there was a possibility Mateo might not wake up, my consciousness drifted even further away. Despite feeling disappointed in his act of infidelity, I still loved my husband deeply. Holding his hand, I prayed from the bottom of my heart for him to regain consciousness. And then, to my astonishment, Mateo's hand moved slightly and he returned the grip. Acting on instinct, I tapped his shoulder and called his name repeatedly, and Mateo slowly opened his eyelids. It was a miraculous moment as he regained consciousness. Ah, thank you, God. When my mother-in-law went to call the doctor and have Mateo's condition checked, it seemed there were no particular issues, so she was allowed to stay with him. As my mother-in-law and I sat on the chairs next to Mateo, the woman who was his affair partner awkwardly moved her chair away and retreated to the corner of the room. I'm glad you're okay. I was so worried.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But why did you leave me behind? He hesitated for a moment, but then resignedly began explaining what happened over the past 3 days.
Your morning sickness was getting really severe, right? So I went to a spiritual hotspot to pray for your recovery.
Prayer? I was taken aback by his unexpected words, but he didn't seem like he was lying.
I heard there's a powerful spiritual hotspot deep in the mountains that is believed to be effective for wishing for loved ones. But the road leading there is not well maintained, and it's like a hidden place, so it takes time to reach. That's why I had to leave the hospital quickly after you were admitted.
What? If that's the case, then why didn't you tell me?
There are rules, you see. To make a wish at that power spot, I must not contact the person I'm wishing for.
At that moment, I glanced at my mother-in-law.
I'm sorry. I heard it from Mateo over the phone, but he strongly warned me not to say anything either.
So that's how it was. I appreciate that he went with good intentions, but there's something I can't forgive. But even so, you didn't have to go with your affair partner.
Affair?
He responded with a clueless tone, as if he didn't understand what I was talking about. Thinking he was pretending, I turned my gaze to that young woman sitting in the corner of the room, and Mateo, too, followed my gaze and looked at her.
Huh? Why are you...
He said with a bewildered expression on his face. Huh? Both I and my mother-in-law exclaimed in surprise and widened our eyes. The woman looked embarrassed and shrunk back slightly. Who is she?
She's a member of the same project team at work, right, Karen?
Upon being called Karen, she gathered her resolve and walked up to us.
I'm Karen. I'm sorry. It's a lie that I'm Mateo's girlfriend.
Surprised, we listened as Karen began to explain the situation. According to her story, Karen admired Mateo, her senior colleague at work, and over time, that admiration turned into romantic feelings. Despite knowing he was married, she continued to message him outside of work hours, disguising it as work-related discussions. It turns out that Karen was indeed the person he was exchanging messages with on his smartphone. However, her attempts were in vain, as Mateo showed no interest in any woman other than his wife, completely unaware of her advances. In fact,
asking questions even after work hours, she's so dedicated.
She was even praised for her work ethic. It's a typical response from Mateo, who seems insensitive to personal relationships, but it turns out Karen was only valued as a co-worker. So Karen devised a plan. Karen was the one who revealed the famous spiritual hotspot to Mateo. She knew that Mateo was concerned about my morning sickness and that he had strong religious beliefs, so she thought that if she told him about a powerful spiritual hotspot, he would definitely go. So through colleagues at work, Karen spread rumors to Mateo. As expected, the plan worked, and Mateo quickly set off after admitting me to the hospital. When Karen received a message on her phone that he would be taking some time off from work, she became convinced that he was going to the spiritual hotspot. With that certainty in mind, she waited for him there, secretly following his every move. If everything went according to plan, she would appear before Mateo the moment he arrived at the spiritual hotspot. It's fate, isn't it? It seems she had plans to say that and perform a prayer for a good relationship. However, Mateo slipped and hit his head in the mountains, losing consciousness. In a state of panic, she made an emergency call for help. It seems that the hospital tried to contact Mateo's family, so Karen instructed them to call his mother instead of me. Karen knew that I was hospitalized, and she had witnessed Mateo speaking with his mother on the phone just before he slipped. Based on that, she believed that his mother would come immediately if informed. If Mateo wakes up, there's a chance he might turn towards me, Karen said, holding on to a faint glimmer of hope. With that in mind, she lied to us, claiming, I am his girlfriend.
I'm so sorry for putting you, Mateo, in danger because of me. And on top of that, I lied. I was completely out of my mind. I'm the worst.
Karen finished her explanation and apologized again, shedding tears. I was completely stunned by the outrageous story, and I didn't know what to say. Both Mateo and my mother-in-law had the same blank expression on their faces. I thought she was a person who had been involved in stalker-like behavior and had outrageous thoughts, but now I can see that she deeply regrets her actions. Honestly, I was surprised. I want you to let go of Mateo already, but thanks to you, my husband was saved. Thank you.
Indeed. Regardless of the motive, you are our son's savior. Allow me to express my gratitude.
My mother-in-law and I sincerely expressed our gratitude. Karen seemed surprised for a moment when she was thanked, and then she bowed her head multiple times. Mateo appeared uncomfortable and awkward, but he followed us and spoke up.
I'm truly grateful for your help, but I'm sorry. I can't see you as anything more than a junior colleague, and I can't have any interest in anyone other than Mia.
He said it decisively.
No, I don't deserve to be thanked. I'm sorry for being selfish, but I'm really glad.
Karen continued to apologize, shedding more tears, and she also apologized to Mateo for lying. She was simply overjoyed that his life was saved. Afterward, the three of us comforted Karen and left the hospital room when things settled down. Fortunately, Mateo was able to be discharged without any lasting effects. I also stayed in the hospital for about 10 days, and my morning sickness symptoms subsided, allowing me to be safely discharged. Mateo continued to worry and take care of me every day, and with the stability of the second trimester, I was able to live a calm life. Most importantly, the anxiety about my husband's infidelity disappeared. And then I safely gave birth while holding Mateo's hand. The next morning, still awkwardly holding our baby, Mateo came to the hospital room.
I'm so glad the baby was born safely. Now we need to go make a wish for the child's well-being.
He said that and began earnestly searching for a place. I was somewhat amazed by Mateo's devoutness. Remember this, being by our child's side is the best medicine, more than any wish. I gently advised him. Mateo had a bewildered look on his face.
But I don't have anything I can do.
You were hospitalized too, so you understand, right? Upon hearing that, he nodded vigorously.
Ah, yes. I certainly felt anxious being alone.
It seems like he finally understood. There will be many challenges in raising our first child from now on. Nevertheless, I am confident that everything will be all right as long as I am with him, I thought, and I embraced our newborn baby.